please. Good evening, everybody. My name is Councillor Paul Arnott. I'm chairing this meeting as the chair of the Local Authority Trading Company Shareholders Committee. Welcome, everybody, including councillors present here in Blackdown House and any members of public watching. Those present, usual stuff, no fire alarm expected. You know the routes out. If you need assistance, please let me know. And I'll tell you when it's safe to return. With the exception of the confidential item at the end of the agenda, the meeting can be viewed live online on our YouTube page. It's also being recorded and available on YouTube at the end of this meeting. Agenda and papers have been published on the council website. And please, councillors and officers, could you refer to page numbers wherever possible in the agenda pack to assist in finding the appropriate information. There's a whole load of stuff about how to behave in a meeting. I think you all know it, so I'm going to flick through that. We'll start the meeting now by doing a roll call and declarations of interest, which also covers agenda item 2 on the agenda. And I'll invite our Democratic Services Manager, Andrew Melwish, to read out your name and so forth. Over to you, Andrew, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So roll call and declarations. Councillors. Councillor Arnott, I'll start with you, please.
Present and no declarations of interest, thank you.
Councillor Hawkins.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Young.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Loudon.
Present, no declarations. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. And Councillor Olive.
Present and no declarations. Thank you.
Okay. Just for the record, Councillor Barlow and Councillor Roy Collins are present. Do either of you have any declarations you wish to make, councillors?
No. No.
Thank you very much. Chair, I can confirm that the meeting is quorate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we have no extra apologies, Andrew, as far as I'm aware. Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. We've already covered that. Item 3, minutes, agenda item 3, pages 3 to 5. Councillors, are you happy with those minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of October 2025? Everybody seems to be so, in which case thank you, and I will... I think Jeff was nodding, actually, that he was happy. Yeah, no, don't worry. So thank you for that, and I assume, Andrew, I'll sign those later at the appropriate moment. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Confidential exempt items, that's item 6 on the agenda. There is one item of confidential exempt business set out in the agenda item 11, pages 15 to 33 in your agenda pack. Item 7, shareholder committee governance arrangements, agenda item 7 on the agenda, pages 6 to 9. And I am advised to invite David Robertson to present the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just give brief 3 key points on this report, and then we'll invite questions from yourselves and the committee to clarify any points. This report is primarily for information, so that you're aware of what's going on, with 2 recommendations in there that we're seeking for you to agree. This relates to the practical business of this committee itself, and just making sure that we've got the correct procedures in place. So the first is to talk about the terms of reference for the committee, and we are proposing that Bevan Britton, our ongoing legal firm, are going to develop a draft of that, working with statutory officers and ourselves within Street Scene. That will then be workshopped by officers, and we're inviting the committee to be part of that process as development if they so wish. That's the first point. The second point is the schedule of meetings and business. Again, we need to ensure that the committee is achieving what it needs to by mapping out over the next 12 months or more when it will be meeting and the key items of business that it will need to be considering. So a practical example of that will be the business plan for the company, which will need your approval, and the operating budget, which will be an annual process. So we need to make sure that that falls in line with council, cabinet, and the company's board of directors to make sure that all is in alignment. Again, Bevan Britton will be supporting us on that, and we will come back at a future point with more detail. And the third point on this paper, on this report, is training for members of this committee in terms of their role, their duties, their limitations. We're proposing that we use Association for Public Service Excellence, APSI, who are quite a well-known organisation, a not-for-profit organisation working within the local government sphere. They've got lots of in-house experience at running and supporting the running of local authority companies, and they've identified a trainer who is a former monitoring officer and an active solicitor who's going to be very suitable for that. So we're seeking your approval that we will arrange that training, and strongly encouraging you please to come along to that, because I feel it will be very valuable. Those are the 3 points I wanted to highlight to yourselves. So Chair, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much for that, David. Regarding the training, it's 2 sessions that are being suggested, isn't it? Just wondering why 2 and not sort of 1 biggie? Is there a reason for that?
I think practicalities that it could be quite draining to have sort of 5 hours of listening to very dry detail, and I think for anybody we want a break in that. So they recommend that it's split into 2 sessions online of between 2 and 2.5 hours. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So members of the council outside of committee, please feel free to comment if you wish. The 2 recommendations are that the committee notes the progress on the development of the terms of reference and proposed changes to the council's constitution, and second, that members of the committee receive training to support delivery, etc. Ian Barlow. Ian, please, Councillor Barlow.
Just wanted to ask, will outside or other members of the council be included on, or could be included on the training, just in case anyone drops out, having reserves?
Have we considered that, David, about training an infinite number of people in case? Okay, David, and then come to John Loudon.
I'm on now. I was going to step back and hope that one of my colleagues would answer that one, please.
While they're thinking, let's come to Councillor Loudon then.
Chair, my memory serves me that this is a subcommittee of cabinet, and therefore it would fall to being cabinet members. And I understand the point that Councillor Barlow makes, but I'm just wondering, we could go on ad infinitum. What if the 2 people, for argument's sake, we put in for the training, then are unable to make it? And I think the leader chose the people to sit on this committee on the basis of the portfolios they hold, as opposed to any other rationale. So I think Ian's point is a good one, but I'm not sure it's practical. Whilst I've got the floor, Chair, given there's only 5 of us, David, who would be, I'm assuming only 5 of us, would be trained, I would ask that, where possible, that we attempt to do a doodle poll or something similar. So rather than setting a date and then assuming we can all try and work around it, we try and do it that way, if possible. Just a practical approach. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Councillor Loudon. You're coming back.
Sorry,
Oh,
if
sorry.
I just say, and it may come up later on, but I'm very pleased that we're using APSI.
Very good. Councillor Barlow.
Just going back on that, thank you very much. I realise it never, from outside cabinet, will ever sit on this, but I just noticed that it says that these skills will be applied in other roles. If it's an online training session and it's available for 10 to 15 people, rather than the 5 of you on it, if there are free places, I would like to go on it. If you do have free places, I promise I won't ask any questions.
So we need that kind of, not just in writing, but in blood, probably. It seems, I kind of feel as if none of us here can really answer that.
We probably just need to look at what the training course is built on.
Yes.
People will be on it and we'll come back.
So Ian, we'll take a positive view of that, but we'll look at how the training course is constructed and whether it is appropriate for a more general use. But I think it's a decent ask. So thank you very much. So coming back into Cabinet now, anybody got any further comments on David's report, or are we happy? Yes, well, Councillor Todd, and then Councillor Olive, and then Councillor Hawkins, please.
I propose the recommendations, Chair.
Councillor Hawkins, please.
So I'll second, but I did just wanted to query the bit about the portfolio holder group and the shareholder committee receiving updates, and just how do those roles work, I guess, in practice to make sure we're not duplicating effort everywhere, and almost how does that, is this part of like the transitional period for the December 26th where where that group seems to dissolve into other groups?
So the primary purpose prior to the setting up of the company was to act in a sort of an overview and scrutiny type of role, very tightly bound to this particular project. And that's been really successful. I think we've had a lot of consensus building about what the company ought to be for and how it looks and its strategic objectives and so on. When we took a governance proposal to Cabinet in July, we proposed a gentle tapering off of the portfolio holder group as the shareholder committee and the board of directors find their feet. So what we've attempted to do in the recommendations and in the commentary of this paper today is to say that there will be a role for the portfolio holder group still, but to emphasise that that is not decision making. It wasn't decision making, and it wouldn't be in any event. It is advisory, and the purpose of that is to maintain that consensus. Now, ultimately, it's up for the shareholder committee and the portfolio holder to decide the most appropriate way. Portfolio holder groups they're in the constitution. You know, they're a part of this council, and they're considered to be part of good business. Beyond that, I can give you the information, and I'd pass it over to yourselves to decide how you feel that role is appropriate going forwards.
Okay, is that okay, Councillor Hawkins? Okay, thank you very much. In which case, I suggest we go to a vote on those recommendations. We have Councillor Olive proposing, Councillor Hawkins seconding. All those in favour, please. And that's clearly carried. Thank you very much indeed. We now come to agenda item 8, which is a project management update, which is a verbal update. Coming back to David again, please. Oh, excitingly. Oh, there. So, for the many of you watching online, we're plugging in to the internet machine. Anything could now happen. David, are you good to go?
Yeah.
Lovely. In which case, let's bring David Robertson forward then now to speak. Thank you, David.
Thank you. This is a verbal update, but with slides, if that's not... yeah, okay. So this is an update on the state of the project management, and I've got 8 slides, which I will attempt to go through relatively quickly and then go through questions, please, Chair. So firstly, just to cover project control, for an update for that. The project management structures are working very effectively at the moment. So we're using a project management approach using Microsoft Planner, which is a tried and tested way of doing this. It's very effective for people to collaborate, particularly where we've got strata, we've got outside organisations supporting us as well. We're all able to collaborate in the same project plan in the same way. We have an active risk register, issues log, decisions log. We have a Gantt chart of what we're doing. All of those elements that you would expect in good quality project management are there. And we're also using a couple of other tools in there as well. We're using SharePoint and Microsoft Teams to store all of the documentation and the discussions and the meetings in the same place. And we're using new components, which I haven't mentioned in here as well, such as Microsoft Loop, which is a relatively new innovation in the Microsoft world, which is helping us to keep track of meetings and tasks as well. So in terms of the structural side of it, we've made quite a lot of progress over the last few months in making sure that that's moving forwards. I think there's always improvement can be made there, but that's where we are. Now, the current position of the actual delivery of the project, brief update for the committee. The company has been created and the shareholder committee is now operational, as you well know. The temporary directors have been appointed and we will be arranging training for them. We'll come up to that later in the evening. And the managing director, we're in the process of appointing them and confirming that appointment. The offer has been made and we're just going through the detail of finalising that. And then likewise, the project management structures are operating effectively and work is progressing across the key work streams. So the key risks, I hope this is visible, it's slightly smaller. Risks that we have identified are procurement of the fleet maintenance service. So when we move from Suez to the LATCo, the fleet maintenance, the repairs of the vehicles, that will remain with Suez. So we need to make alternative arrangements for that. That could be through Suez themselves and they're amenable to that, but we need to make sure that we're making appropriate competitive procurement processes for that. And we need to consider whether that's the best value option for us as well. The risk there would be that we don't do this in time and we end up having problems with vehicle maintenance. So we are prioritising that and we need to make sure that we continue to do so. Delays in choosing the company name are now becoming, you'll hear this repetitively from me, they're now becoming an issue for us, so we're keen to get the name of the company resolved. If we don't do that, our colleagues at Strata are telling us that they will have difficulty in achieving the IT delivery to the timescales that we need. In practical terms, we need to start setting up email addresses, servers, we need all of that sort of base stuff that happens in the IT behind the scenes to be there. And they really do need a name for the company to do that. Pension fund arrangements, unsurprisingly, are a challenge that we will have some people within local government pension scheme, LGPS, and we need to make sure that we make those arrangements in time for them to transfer across. And there is a general risk of project costs overrun. This is no surprise, any project faces this, ensuring that it doesn't cost more and doesn't take longer than we'd hoped it would. So we're watching that carefully and we will report back through ELT and through the project team and ultimately to the shareholder committee where we have real concerns there. Next steps then are we are just starting on a high-level critical friend review where we're asking a third party with experience of this sort of thing to come in, look at what we're doing for project management, look at our delivery and give us advice on how we can improve that. I think that's a very welcome thing and that's be helpful to give the committee assurance that we're doing the right thing in the right way, and where they make recommendations to change, that we make sure we deliver against that. We need to decide a procurement strategy for fleet maintenance, so whether we can do a direct award or whether we need to go to the market. We need to develop a detailed plan of the company's financial arrangements. We need to onboard the managing director, and we need to establish the scope and resourcing of the finance work stream. Those are just some of the key tasks. I will very briefly go through some of those key work streams. Each of these work streams, we have different senior managers from within the council leading on this, contributing to the project management team. I'm the project manager, coordinating their efforts and doing as much as I can to support the delivery as well. IT is on target. We've got very good, very effective engagement from our colleagues at Strata. It's well funded. They've already got 2 members of staff working on this permanently and they're delivering very effectively. Human resources, likewise, we have recruited an external partner, Fitzgerald HR, who are based within Devon, who are going to be supporting delivery. The reason is that there's a lot of work to be done there in terms of the staff transfer on the TUPE arrangements, setting up appropriate pensions, helping to deliver the payroll function, lots and lots of detailed work to be done, and they've got expertise in that. The Suez demobilisation, likewise, that's on target. We are having regular meetings with senior management and operational managers at Suez. They are very well engaged. They are very supportive. And I wouldn't just say that. I think we're getting a lot of help from them at the moment, and that's very useful. On the fleet work stream, I've talked about that briefly. That is on target as well, but it remains a risk for us to make sure that we deliver that. We've brought in advice from fleet management specialists to support us in that. In simple terms, they know how to write a good contract for fleet maintenance provision. The finance work stream, we've talked about this at ELT recently and highlighting that there are some risks with that one, and that is primarily capacity within the finance team, but we're addressing that, and we've managed to identify, or Simon's identified resource within the team that can come on and work with us on that. At the moment, that's not causing us any problems, but if we didn't resolve this before Christmas, we would find ourselves in the new year not having enough time to write all of the financial procedures, arrange the accounts, and so on. So that's where the finance stream is at. Communications is slightly behind schedule, but most definitely improving. I'm sure you'll be aware that the council has recently appointed an assistant director who is covering the communications brief. That's been hugely beneficial to us. That's now moving at leaps and bounds. So where we were stuck a few weeks ago, that's now moving very rapidly, and we can report that's working well. Procurement remains a high risk, partly because our internal procurement function is quite limited, and we rely on Devon County Council in an advisory capacity, and partly because we're becoming to realise just how many high value procurements this organisation is going to have to undertake. The new company is still bound by the Procurement Act 2023, and it has to follow all of the legal duties within that in the same way that the council will. So we're highlighting that as a risk. And then the company setup and governance is on target. I'm not going to attempt to explain this Gantt chart, this high-level plan. This is here really to illustrate, to give you an assurance. This is the high-level version of our project plan. Behind this, there is one that streams on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines. Behind that, each of the own individual work streams has its own planning as well. So just wanted to give a sort of a show and tell on that. Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Yes, Councillor Barlow, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm that the new MD that's going to be hired fairly shortly will not be on the local government pension scheme.
So I think on that, since these are terms and conditions of an employment matter, happy to take that perhaps in Part B. But if you understand that, Ian, that's okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments, please, from anybody? No, in which case I think we're just, Councillor Loudon, please.
Sorry, Chair, I was a bit slow. Thank you, David. So just, can we have a copy of that, please? Two things that you put up. Oh, you're there. Sorry. I was reading my notes and then looking. So first of all, you said LGPS, the arrangements for LGPS may not be achieved on time. What leads you to say that? And let me just ask both questions, if I may, and then you can think. The other one is quite a short one. Roughly how many staff are we looking to transfer in from Suez? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So it's highlighted as a risk on local government pension scheme because we identify that if we don't act on this soon, then we will find ourselves in a situation where we don't register ourselves properly and appropriately with Peninsula, who are the local provider for Devon. So at the moment, we're not saying that it is a risk that will come to pass and be a failure. We're saying this is, in terms of our things we're looking at, this is one of the biggies for us, is to make sure that we deliver against this. There are 5 employees who are within scope of LGPS. These are the ones who are currently employees of the council, and the agreed plan is that they will transfer across. I say 5, I think it's 5 posts, but I have a feeling one of them may be vacant at the moment. So those are the ones who will need to transfer across. And this partly answers the second one. So 5 of them are from the council or thereabouts, and from the Suez side of things, there's roughly 150. Those are not within scope of LGPS. We've had assurances that sometimes you find staff who've worked for councils perhaps 20 years ago. As far as we understand it, that isn't the case, but we will find out when the TUPE lists are provided to us.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. In which case, I think without any further questions, we don't vote on that. We just note it with thanks to David. So let's move on then to David again for item 9, company governance key tasks, agenda items 9, pages 10 to 14.
Thank you, Chair. I feel we ought to share this around with my colleague here, who's doing very well next to me, my boss. Next time, perhaps. Okay.
No, your boss seems very happy with it just as it is.
Company governance update. So we've talked about the governance of the committee already. Now we're moving.
Be a pain.
Sorry.
But on the report I'm looking at, it says Part B, so I'm just checking whether it is Part B or not.
No, I think the next item 10.
That's fine. I just wanted
Is
to
B,
double
yeah.
check before we launched in. Thank you. It's probably
Yes,
an
very
error
good
on the
point.
top of the document.
That is an error in the drafting. An early draft was Part B. Melanie, you had said to me, flip this from Part B to Part A, which clearly I haven't done. The reasoning for that, Chair and committee, was that originally I was worried in the drafting that we might stray into information that would be legally privileged or similar. When we reviewed a late draft of the report, we concluded that actually there wasn't any, and it was more appropriate in the spirit of openness that we flipped it to Part A.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, David. No, absolutely right to point it out. Thank you for that.
Okay, shall I continue, Chair?
Please do, David.
Thank you. So 3 key points on this report, and then you can discuss it, and then we'll come to the recommendations. The first one I wanted to highlight was the appointments of the non-executive directors and the finance director. This is a work in progress, but I felt it was important. We felt it important to update you because the shareholder committee will ultimately be making these appointments. Therefore, you need to be assured of the process. In very simple terms, we have the 2 directors at the moment who are in place temporarily. That they're full directors as far as Company House is concerned. That is their legal status. But we're intending to recruit non-executive directors from within the region, within the community, and people with appropriate experience and skills in order to deliver those roles. Within that as well, there is a finance director who's also a non-executive that we'll talk about briefly. At a high level, what we are proposing is to use a combination of the local networks of people that are known to us, our council website to advertise it and encourage through the community people who could be potential candidates for that to step forwards. We're also belt and braces supporting that through or we propose to support that through a simple recruitment process using LinkedIn. Having spoken with a number of colleagues who've done this for other organisations, they've said that sourcing non-executive directors through LinkedIn adverts is quite effective. And it also ensures that we aren't just narrowing the pool to people that we know, but we're broadening it more out there. So that will cost us, we believe, less than £1,000 to do that activity. And our intention is that the committee will be in a position, probably in the new year now, where there will be able to be a proper process for that. Now, at this stage, it is very high level, and my apologies, I can't map it out with a full detailed plan for you. But helpfully, I think we'd appreciate your feedback as to whether that's the right direction of travel and how much involvement you would like within that process, which I'm hoping is quite a lot. That's the first point. The second one is to highlight procurement issues that we have. Now, again, we're finding our feet on this one because so far the council has been procuring everything that's needed for the project to deliver it, and that's within the council's procurement rules and using our budgets, which is the budget that was agreed for the project budget that was agreed by council back in February. The organisation itself will need to start making its own procurement decisions fairly quickly. You know, things such as training for the directors, which is a small scale thing, and then the large scale items such as procuring fleet maintenance and strata. Our view is that if it was to replicate the policies used within council, that those were written and they didn't have this scenario in mind. There's a lot of procurement that needs to happen. It needs to happen quickly. It needs to be legal and it needs to follow best practice. But what we're proposing is that we take a lighter touch in some areas so that the managing director and the management team are freed up and don't spend inordinate amounts of time on the procurement activities, which isn't necessarily, it could be counterproductive, I think is the honest answer. At this stage, we're asking you to consider this and agree in principle that we pull together some lighter touch procurement policies and that those can then be delivered against. The third point to raise, and I'm sorry that I feel I'm repeating this a lot today, is the company naming, and just to emphasise that we do need to achieve this. In order to oil the wheels on that one and move it along, we have secured a communications agency locally who will be able to work with the ideas that are presented to them for the name, and will develop those up into branding concepts, which can then, we can choose one of those branding concepts. The committee will ultimately decide the name of the company and that branding. So the intention is that within the next few working days, I think by about the 27th or 28th, we'll have a report from the communications agency with 3 options worked up, and then the committee needs to make a decision on one of those. Prior to that, we're asking members of the committee and portfolio holder group and others with a long list of options of names to vote for their preferred ones. So that will produce that shortlist. Those are the 3 points in the paper I wanted to highlight, but there is quite a lot in here that you may also want to ask. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Dave, very much for that. And I think a number of us will have filled in the initial thing. Councillor Hawkins first, please.
Thanks. Couple of bits. I'll do it in one hit, if that's okay, with apologies. The finance director, I think you mentioned, was non-exec level, and I just wanted to check if that was correct, because I would have thought if you're in charge of finances, you should be at exec level. And at 3.5, there is mention of using LinkedIn for recruitment of NEDs. I think that's sensible. That's normally the sort of level for that bit. And it's more of a just check that that cost ultimately is going to be borne by LATCo, even if it's through a balance owed back to the council, because it should be their cost. And then the final bit I want to touch on was the procurement table at the 6.4. And it's just where one of the approvals is set as assistant director street scene. Just thinking, obviously, the company's its own legal entity. It should probably be somebody within the company that approves that, whether it's the company's existing temporary directors or someone else. It might be almost transparently through they take the steer from the assistant director street scene, but they've got no direct involvement in the company. So it'd be that's the only bit I've got a question mark on, those procurement bits, but I appreciate the need for practicality in that, and just trying to make sure we get that sort of legally robust and the right people, the right authorities are actually doing it.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and cover those, and I may need support from colleagues on some of them. So for the finance director, at the moment, the proposal that was put forward in February or July cabinet, I forget which one it was, but I think it might be July, was that we have the non-executive directors who are committing perhaps between 12 and 24 days per year to the company. But we identified that the finance director role was a more important one for several reasons, which are strategic. The first is to have someone who is in a stronger position to be a counterbalance to the managing director. We have a good managing director in post, but we were always conscious within governance that these can't be decisions by one person. So having a finance director who is at a slightly higher level than the non-exec directors, but one of them, that would allow that person more scope to scrutinise and challenge in an appropriate way. My view on that, which I think is open to the committee and also to members of ELT, my view is that that finance director role is very much strategic of the governance of the company, as opposed to the sort of day-to-day management activities of creating the accounts, which would be with the finance business partner, which will be proposed. So the intention is a finance director has that very step back and strategic role, ensures, for example, compliance with all the financial regulations in terms of statements and that sort of thing. We're also toying internally with the idea of them taking on the company secretary role. Now, the company secretary role is not statutory, it's just good practice that someone acts as a company secretary, and we see potential there as well. I was talking to senior colleagues earlier about this and flagging this and saying I think we need to have a bit more clarity as to, I'm making the proposals, but I'm conscious myself of saying we need more clarity on what this finance director is going to do for us. We have sessions set up with Bevan Britton later in a couple of weeks' time. We'll put that on the agenda at that session, and I think at that point we will be able to come back to the committee with a clearer definition of what we think the role of the finance director will be. Councillor, I'll take a pause if you want to come back on that one, or shall I go to the next question?
Sorry. Fine. I think it makes sense ultimately. Let's know what the spec of the FD role is to know where it sort of sits. Obviously, exec, non-exec directors they're not real defined terms under company law, so you can kind of do what you like with them. It just feels that an FD, by definition, ultimately should have their hand quite firmly on the tiller when it comes to finances, and one would expect exec directors to be able to disagree. That's the kind of point of a board of directors. So, but I take away the full point. Yeah, let's get the job spec first, and then we can worry about what hats we make them wear.
Thank you. It's no surprise that I personally have not been in a position of having to recruit a finance director before, so I'm learning on this one. However, I'm not the only person in the mix, so I'll give you a reassurance that there are more experienced people. Councillor, I'm happy.
I suppose I just wanted to sort of, build on what Councillor Hawkins has just raised. So, and forgive me if I haven't recalled the detail of the July Cabinet report, but so Sam said it'd be good to have the job spec of the finance director, because what you've just outlined there builds upon, I suppose, what I had in my mind. So that's useful. Are we going to create, or have we created job specs for the non-execs? Because it's easy to say, oh, you're a non-exec, and I can make an assumption about what a non-exec should do and what their skills and experience would be, but I presume we would need that if we're going out to recruit.
Thank you, Councillor. The non-exec directors need a spec as well, but I anticipate that the shareholder committee will be signing those off.
Andy, please, as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So probably just to help a bit here, I sit on the Science Park Board, and it's interesting for me to see the value that the non-exec directors bring and their real wealth of expertise, actually. So it's an important role, as David has highlighted. I think we can probably ask the Science Park company, as we're a shareholder there as well, for their equivalent job spec, just to speed things up as well. So we'll take that as an action.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Okay, back with me. The second of the three questions there was on section 3.5, the cost. I think at the moment we're in this transition period of making decisions on behalf of the company which exists on paper but yet doesn't have any employees. So we're certainly finding our feet as to how these decisions are being made, and it's quite a healthy discussion we're having internally and with yourselves on the committee as well. Ultimately, the costs of the recruitment will be borne by the council. The contract will be between the company and the LinkedIn, as it will be in this case. They'll be paying LinkedIn for this, but then that will be rebilled to us through the natural progression of this, which is that it's a cost recovery contract. Does that answer the question that you were raising there, Councillor? I'm concerned I may have missed the point.
I think I was looking to see if we can get a recharge, but that might be more of our own internal accounting bit, just more of my finance hat on it. But we're only speaking hundreds, not millions, so it probably doesn't matter too much either way.
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you, Sam. Anybody else, please, on this? Councillor Barlow, please.
Just the third question that Sam asked about the Assistant Director at Salute Scene getting involved in the procurement process.
Yeah, this was drafted by me, and I was on not shaky ground, but there were some things I was trying to practically make solutions, and then thinking, is this practical solution one that washes? Now, at the moment, what we're saying is that the company needs to make decisions, and some of these need to be quite swift decisions on buying things. It doesn't have a staff member at the moment to go to, and the board of directors will be meeting periodically, but they're not going to be working day by day, making these low-level decisions on behalf of the council. So what I've proposed here is that when the managing director is in place, they can very swiftly take on that duty. But in the meantime, the assistant director of street scene, who is effectively who is the budget holder for street scene, which is ultimately picking up the tab, that they're the one that is involved in this. I have to say, I don't feel passionately about that. I was just trying to find a practical solution. We can find alternative solutions to that, which we can propose if needed.
Lovely, David. Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to say anything? Yes, Councillor Loudon, please.
I'm probably on as much shaky ground, if not more, than you are, David. But so yes, and you're trying to find a practical solution to a transition, and I respect that and I get that. So we currently have 2 directors in post for the company. They have legitimate powers within the company. They're the only ones who have legitimate powers in the company until the MD gets boarded on at some point. So would they not be the go-to instead of the assistant director? I mean, one assumes that they would take they would take guidance from the AD, or I mean, again, it's about power dynamic, isn't it? I'm now struggling, so I'm starting off by thinking those 2 directors between them ought to be the people who make those decisions, and how they then get informed to make those decisions.
Sorry, Councillor Hawkins would like to come in at this point.
Yeah, sorry, no, I was just thinking a practical solution, I guess, is either AD goes along and picks up the bits they want to spend, and then a quick message to one of the actual directors to say, can I spend £46 on this? And they, in theory, it's a simple yes, because they know in trial, or they can act as that stopgap, or if it's that important, the AD is also appointed as a director of the company, and therefore naturally has the authority.
I feel as if yes. Well, yes, and whether we've got a definitive answer right now doesn't seem, well, Councillor Barlow, please, yes, come in.
Well, I was just going to say, it wasn't a criticism, I just wanted the question answered, but the actual assistant director of street scene is someone that would have knowledge about the sort of costs that are involved in this. I don't know who your other directors are, but at the end of the day, it would be better someone that you know and trust that has some knowledge of what we're talking about, possibly, rather than someone that you don't or doesn't.
I think between the contributions, I think we are hitting on the 2 key issues here. One of which is we need to make sure that there is good use of public funds. Now, are we buying the right things in the right way, and having an assurance to the public that we're here for, to say, yeah, we're buying the right thing in the right way. The second is the detail of who is actually making decisions on behalf of the council. Now, on behalf of the company, pardon me, Freudian slip. There we go. That just shows how difficult this can be at times. One of the solutions to this, which is in motion, is asking Bevan Britton and our monitoring officer at the sessions that we have scheduled to really sort of, get under the skin of this one and say, who is making what decision, and what's their, what's their sort of mandate to do so. And we're going to come across this regularly of, as the owners of the company, you are ultimately the decision makers. The council owns the company, so we can instruct it to do our bidding in the way that we feel is legal and proper. And that as the owner, that is our function. And I agree that then the board of directors and the managing director has their own duties within that, but their duties are to follow the business plan and that they produce and is agreed by the shareholder committee. The problem we have is that that this is like sort of it's in such an infant form that we're having to find our way through and make sure that we're both being legal and also practically delivering effective management. I need to take this back to the monitoring officer, I think.
Yeah,
is the
I
short
think
answer.
that's right. Let's Sam come in and then.
Yeah, so I was just trying to come up maybe a way forward to that. I'm happy with just going back to recommendations. I've got recommendations 1 to 3, which I think I'll propose them and take them forward. I think David's taken on board our feedback, and sorry for giving you a bit of work there, but maybe if you can come back to the committee with a thought on the procurement, we won't comment on that for this meeting and only propose recommendation 1
So
to 3.
recommendation 4 becomes the committee approves interim procurement process and looks forward to a further report or something like that. Okay, take that one out. Yeah, that makes sense because we've noted what the actions need to be. Question is the timescale, I suppose.
Leader, that was what I was just going to ask. Does that cause any problems for David?
I don't think it will, as long as we make a decision on this relatively soon, within weeks. The reason for that is we continue to use the project budget for these purchases. For example, training, support services, advice from Fitzgerald HR. But as soon as we can, we want to start moving this across into the company. So once we've got a sort of a high-level procurement strategy agreed, that will enable those key decisions to be made and those urgent decisions. That will then, so that's phase 1, it's just a high level, here's how it will buy things. Then that will be followed by much more detailed policies and procedures. Those I don't think realistically will be ready until between March and May, and they have to be ready by July.
The other thing I was going to say is if there was some urgency around it and you didn't want to have another meeting too soon, an option would be to delegate authority to officers in conjunction with perhaps, you know, whether it's Sam or you know, a member of the shareholder committee if it was going to cause you a problem, practical problem.
I was thinking of suggesting that. I was just wondering whether we play by it. We obviously in the council we can do that. Whether under company law that is something we can do as a shareholder committee. That's the obvious solution.
I'm just talking about this committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Sam, please.
Sorry, I guess if anything urgently crops up, there are 2 directors in power that can do what they like. It's just a normal company at the end of the day. There are no limits on them under company law. There's no articles of association. Their hands are completely free. They've got free rein. It's their company. So I think we've got the emergency button already there. It's just we need to make sure we're completely happy that companies law, local government law can jump into bed together.
So we could say that, building on Sam's point, we could delegate the decision making to the 2 directors, subject to or in conjunction with advice or what have you, with chair of the shareholder committee and monitoring officer, something like that.
I think you would, because the decision you're making is effectively a council decision, so you would be delegating it to somebody like Andy as the director in consultation, as you say, with the members.
Yes. I mean, Todd, Councillor Olive.
Thanks, Chair. I was wondering if I could ask a question about something completely different, if that's all right, Chair, rather than continuing with this rabbit hole.
Let's come out the rabbit hole then with. So Sam's saying we've got directors in place. Mel's saying quite right, we ought to be cited as a committee nevertheless. So if it's in consultation with Andy and say me as chair, just so that this committee is cited, that seems to be okay. I don't think we have to pass a recommendation or resolution on that, do we? We just sort of.
No, you would.
We should.
You would, leader. Yeah.
Okay.
You would, effectively, because you've has somebody proposed? No. So you could just literally just change that 4th recommendation, and then obviously you can put them all to the vote.
So while Ian is making his next point, I invite you, Mel, to come up with a 4th recommendation.
My point was, has the company got any money in it? So are the company actually spending the company money, or are they asking for council to spend money towards the company to set up the company? Because in which case, your directors can ask whoever could ask. It doesn't matter because they've still got to come back then to the council to clear it. So you then have your covers there, don't you?
That was in some ways helpful and in some ways. No, listen, we think it, you say it. I mean, you know, yes, yes. But I think let's let Mel have a chance to come up with the fourth recommendation. And while she's doing that, yes, Councillor Olive, to move on to another interesting point, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to talk about the company name briefly, if I may, please, Chair, which seems to be my specialism the last few months. I suppose my question is, and forgive me if this comes with a slight undertone of attitude, but why are we allowing the pretty technical and administrative process of setting up email addresses to govern the timeline for choosing the name of something that could potentially be around in Devon for the next 20, 30, 40 years, if this is adopted by a successor authority post LGR? That feels incongruent to me.
Thank you. I've challenged this a number of times with colleagues at Strata, right up from Steve Morn, who was their most senior person, through to the project manager, and said, "Are you sure?" At each point, we get a very clear and categorical, "Yes, we're sure," and this is the reason. The reason is, of course, the name can be changed, and in which case a project plan can be set in place to say, we'll change the servers, we'll change the emails, we will change the website, and so on. However, given the timeline that the IT project has to work to, if we don't make the decision for a name now, then, and we make that decision later in December or in January, that then resets them back to the beginning of having to go to their third-party suppliers and say, oh, we need to change the name and so on. So what they're saying, and I take this at face value from them and I believe it, is that, yes, of course you can change the name in the future, and then you'd have an IT project which quickly changes the website and changes the email addresses and so on. But where we are at the moment, if we added even a few weeks to their timeline, that's going to put them too far out, it's too much risk to them that they would not be able to deliver everything we need by the 1st of July. I'm passing on the information from them, but I just want to give you the reassurance. I haven't asked the question once, I've asked it multiple times of various people, and they've been very clear and said, we must have a name by early December, otherwise we won't be able to deliver what you need from us.
Thank you, David, for that. Not an ideal answer, but it's obviously completely accurate. So, unless you've got have you dark web or something? Can you help us?
Well, I mean, I suppose my challenge there would be, Chair, and you know, I'm coming at this from the perspective of a councillor who's not an expert in these sort of things, but as an entity that doesn't functionally exist yet, I'm just questioning the complexity of what actually needs to be set up to get this thing mobilised in July. You know, it needs some Microsoft 365 accounts, which will be within Strata's existing 365 tenant, and you can change the domain that's associated with a 365 account like that through the 365 portal, which I'm imagining Strata will be intimately familiar with. A web domain, a website can be pointed to a different domain in maybe half an hour. I've done it myself a few times. You know, I just don't see where that complexity that they're alluding to comes from. Maybe I'm doing an Ian and being unnecessarily obtuse. But this name feels really significant for the identity of these services for the future of Devon. And I wouldn't want to let an IT company being slightly difficult.
I think we should, first of all, I think you should withdraw the comment about Ian being unnecessarily obtuse.
I don't know what obtuse means, Chair, so I'm quite happy to carry on with it.
I do mean that, because that's, you know.
For what it's worth, it was meant fondly, but I will withdraw that, Ian.
And now for some, I thought you were going to come in then, Ian. No, we've got Jeff first, please.
Yeah, I've asked this question on a number of occasions, and it's faffing around and more costs if we have to change the name. And we need to get on with it. We've been dilly-dallying on it for so long. We just need to finalise it, and I'm sure we can come up with a name very shortly.
I mean, yes, we've got to do it at some point, so we might as well do it now. But it was a fascinating discussion, may I say, obtuse. So in which case, over to anybody. Anybody else want to say anything on this item, or are we happy to ask Mel to advise us on recommendation 4?
I mean, I've been reflecting on recommendation 4. I would question whether we're going to need to use the delegation, because I think it may well be a decision of the company, but I think it will be helpful to have it there in place. So I was just going to say that the committee delegates authority to the Director of Place to approve the interim procurement process in consultation with the leader, if that's acceptable.
That's everybody happy with that? In which case, anybody like to? I'll propose that from the chair, or did we already? Which item did? It's been proposed already, isn't it?
No.
No, I'll propose it from the chair. Don't need a seconder, because of my supreme powers. In which case, can we go to the vote on that? All those who agree, please. Thank you very much. That's none against, and that's carried. Thank you, David, very much indeed. I'm now going to go to the Vice Chair of the committee and indeed of Cabinet to move the following resolution.
I move to pass a resolution that the press and public are excluded from the meeting under Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 on the basis that if they were present during the business to be transacted, there would be a likelihood of disclosure of exempt information within the meaning of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972 as the information relates to the finance or business affairs of any particular person. I move. So, is there a seconder to that, please? Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. All those in favour, please show. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just wait now for Andrew to indicate when we are no longer live on YouTube.